this officer and these two goons that were captured with him apparently thought that they were fighting Polish troops. They'd been told, and this is an officer. They'd been told by their higher commanders that NATO had invaded Ukraine. As you look at it, so obviously that's west east. NATO forces had invaded Ukraine, coming underneath Belarus because Belarus apparently was too strong for NATO to deal with. And the Polish troops at the point of the spear were coming up through the bottom of Ukraine to go in towards Kyiv, and that the Russian troops had been told by their officers that they were fighting against NATO, pushing them back to defend Ukraine and to defend Kyiv. That's that even officers were being told by their higher commanders, NATO's attacked Ukraine, we're liberating Ukraine.
Hello and welcome to Frontline with me, Kate Chabot, and this time we are joined from Kyiv by former British Army officer Simon Woodiwiss. Simon was an infantry officer before working round the world as a security specialist. He's now based in Ukraine as director of the British company Objective Ukraine and the defence and security advisor to the British Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. Simon, great to see you again. Welcome back to Frontline.
Hello, Kate. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. So you're in Kyiv. It's experiencing one of the coldest winters there in years, and Ukraine's critical infrastructure has been bombed consecutively for more than 100 days. How have you been affected there in Kyiv?
Well, there's a lot of power cuts. So, for example, the power came on for a few hours the other day, or sorry, last night, in the middle of the night. It's a bit of a pain in the backside when you forget to turn the lights off after the power has gone off, because then it wakes you up in the middle of the night. The mayor has done a lot more since the president of Ukraine has encouraged him recently. Prior to that, and the mayor's a very busy guy, of course, and so is his team, and so is the city administration. But there's things that could have been done because things have improved. But so that's kudos to the mayor, kudos to the president. But the prior to that, we had about half an hour on Friday night, which I missed because I was out, and then before that, last Wednesday morning, we only had about an hour and a half. So it's pretty tricky. It's dark a lot. The power, when you lose power, then the local councils, etc., can't pump water into the flats, and a lot of the older flats have got this sort of ex-communist central water heated water system. So flats have got water, cold water, hot water, gas, and electricity. And when the power goes, obviously it affects pretty much everything apart from gas.
So what's it actually like on a day-by-day basis for you? What's it like living in these conditions?
It's pretty chilly, you know. There's a lot of snow out there. It gets dark a lot when you don't want it to. And that's about it, really. People just crack on. We've been here before. The first year, Christmas 22, 23, that was tricky. There were these invincibility points around the city, which made you saw a lot more people back then than you do now, just hanging around on street corners, crowding around generators, etc. Certainly, on all the places I've been to in Kyiv over the last couple of weeks, I haven't seen so much of that, but they're out there if people need to use them, and great people like this cafe manager sitting just to my right here, just off Creshatic Street, which is the main street. It's a bit like Oxford Street in Oxford Street, Regent Street rolled into one back in London. They allow people to come in and use their plugs to charge things. So there's a real community feeling here. Everyone's cracking on with it. There's bigger fish to fry, things up in the sky, and looking after the people at the front.
Yeah, exactly. And President Zelensky has blamed the level of successful attacks on the shortage of missiles for its defense systems provided by allies. They now have started to arrive in Ukraine. Have you noticed any difference?
Well, I'm not involved in anything like that. I'm not here in a military capacity or defense capacity. I mean, I haven't really noticed anything. It's a big old town here. Things get winged at this country from all sorts of directions. And the people defending this city and all the other towns around the country have got a pretty large area to worry about. So if you get donations of point defense systems like auto cannons, etc., anything that's automatic, then they can only be condensed into a fairly small area. So, for example, protecting something strategic like a nuclear power station. But when you've got SAMs, missiles, they can cover a much wider area, but there's a big old area here that needs to be defended. We need to get a lot more stuff in here, a lot more stuff from the allies to defend these people. Because I mean, I didn't used to think this. As I've said in the past, I don't believe that Russia would invade a NATO country. They'd get spanked if they did. They wouldn't stand a chance. I mean, they wouldn't. So I think when people say that Ukraine has been defending us, it's a bit of a double-edged weapon because it scares people back home, and we don't send enough stuff to the people that really need it, which is the Ukrainians.
And Ukraine has to keep coming up with new ideas to plug the holes in its air defences. And there is a new initiative, I understand, in Kyiv aimed at protecting perhaps a quarter of the capital. Can you tell us a bit more about it and how it would complement the work of the Territorial Defence Force?
The Territorial Defence Force of Ukraine is a very important part of the armed forces of Ukraine. So you've got land forces, Navy, Air Force, etc. You've also got special forces, then there's the National Guard of Ukraine, and then you've got the Territorial Defence Force. These are volunteers. These are men and women who have got day jobs here in the city and all around the country, who give up certain amounts of time every month. I think a minimum duty I think they have to do is two 24-hour duties a month, and they act like reservists in any country, just like our fantastic reservists in the UK. They give up their time, but unlike reservists in the UK, they don't get paid for it. So what they do is they go and man machine guns. There's some pretty old clobber that they have to use, unfortunately. They do get supplemented by military units as well. And so people from land forces, people from the Air Force come along with their man pads. That's short. Man pad means man portable air defense system. Things like Stingers, people might have heard of those, Iglas, Perons, and a range of other shoulder launched anti aircraft missiles. The fantastic short or BAE system, Martlet, or lightweight multi-role missile system, which are so much cheaper and so much better than Stingers, etc., etc. All that stuff, and it's really good stuff, goes to the front, and it also is used to protect strategic assets. So the Territorial Defence Force is very much the poor cousin, for want of another phrase. And so the work that the volunteers do, the domestic citizens of this country, is vital. They're using machine guns and things like that, and maybe the odd autocannon here or there. But there's a new project I found out just a couple of days ago that allows foreign residents who are working in Kyiv, so people who've got businesses here, families, girlfriends, whatever, homes to protect, they can now contribute to the defence of the capital city of this country by giving up some of their time as well and reinforcing these territorial defence force units. Not something I'm doing. Certainly something I would consider. I think they will be doing a fantastic job, and it provides a boost for morale as well. Something that's particularly important, I think. I can imagine that's going to have an effect on for want of a better phrase, the PR and marketing of this war. So we've got Greenland. Let's talk about that later. Greenland, Venezuela, and bloody Iraq, and not Iraq, Iran, and Gaza before that. Takes the attention away from something that really matters to people in Europe. Hang on, I'll let you speak in a minute. And what this project is going to do, I imagine, is raise awareness back in the UK and other countries. People are going to talk about it. They're going to talk about their friends over here that are getting involved to defend, as I said, everything around me right now. And it should hopefully it's sort of turbocharge support again and get people's attention back onto this particular fight.
So, in terms of protecting the air defence contribution, how much of a difference does the Territorial Defence Force actually make, and this actual expansion of it? What difference will it make? What will they be able to bring down? How much more?
Vital. It's a vital contribution. Not just because of what I just mentioned with the PR and the marketing, but they are kinetic. Yeah, they're knocking shaheads down. Okay, obviously you can't do anything about the ballistic missiles if you've just got a bunch of Maxims racked together, or Dushka, or an M2 Browning, colloquially known as Mardus, Marm, and but and without enough tracer ammunition as well, it's hard to walk the rounds onto the target. I've been told. They don't have enough things like the missiles, the man-portable air defense systems I just mentioned. That's when other units come in and reinforce them. But they are playing a vital role in the defense of this town. And it's, as I said, it's good for morale as well when they see foreigners, or when they do see foreigners eventually mixing in with them. So yeah, it's very important.
And President Zelensky also announced this week a new air defence strategy for Ukraine. Is that something completely different? This new facet of air defence with small groups of interceptor drones?
Interceptor drones are very important here. They're important for knocking down things at a higher level. So you've got Shaheads. All this talk about, there's a lot of drone manufacturers here and around the world that will tell you, oh, everything comes in a lot higher now. That's why you need our interceptor drones. Yes, but there's a lot of stuff coming in at low level as well. You hear things flying over buildings all over town at night time, and according to friends who live around town, you hear these. It sounds like a flying lawnmower. It's a piece of crap, really, but it has quite an effect when it hits things here.
What's the concept of this strategy then?
I don't really know enough about it because, as I said, I'm a businessman here. We can talk about my company business later on, but and I don't really know how the territorial. I don't think the new territorial defence reinforcement idea that some of these epic foreigners working here have come up with is actually tied in with that. Yeah, I'm not sure if the president knows about this. I'm sure he'll find out pretty quickly.
He's off to Davos, isn't it? We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, he's got he's got a lot of plates spinning. You know, 100 foreigners getting involved with the territorial defence force to knock down some of these bloody shitheads. It'll appear on his radar at some point, but he's got bigger fish to fry there. So that metaphor again, sorry.
Yeah, and Simon, the International Atomic Energy Agency said this week that several Ukrainian electrical substations vital for nuclear safety were affected by military activity, and that the Chernobyl nuclear power plant lost off-site power again following. That's a Ukrainian one, isn't it? And it lost off-site power again following widespread nuclear activity. That power has since been restored, but this is the second time that the substations supporting Chernobyl have been hit. How dangerous do you think this is?
It's very dangerous. I mean, Chernobyl has got a. I'm not going to tell you yeah. Chernobyl's got a history. Obviously, it's if there was a meltdown, it would be disastrous. We're a long way off that. It's got a dirty great sarcophagus around it that's double skinned or so, but it doesn't help when they chuck things at it at all. It's very, very dangerous, it's highly irresponsible. The nonsense that comes out of the little man in Moscow's mouth back in the Kremlin and his cronies is just ridiculous, saying that it's being overplayed here by the Ukrainians, by the home team, or by the International Atomic Agency. I can never remember that acronym, but it's ridiculous to downplay it. If you take away power from a nuclear power station, if you take away the supporting power systems, then it can affect the pumping of the water that's vital in order to keep the rods cool. Okay, and that's when you have real problems. So we saw this down in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant ZNPP a couple of years ago. The power was taken out there, and they were not able to cool it as they should have been doing. So we were pretty close to having a bit of a meltdown situation there. Now, as long as you can get large generators plugged in to the systems that these power stations need in order to pump water and keep them cool, etc., then they can be managed. And if you're controlling the ground as they are up north of Kyiv currently, and will do going forward, then you can move large generators in from people like General Electric and all these other fantastic manufacturers. The problem that we had down in Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was the enemy was controlling that ground, and it was very much in their interest to say that the Ukrainians had damaged it, not them. It was their responsibility. So you get what I'm saying with that. Yeah, it is a major problem, but you can control it if you've got enough generators to do what needs to be done.
And Simon said in the introduction about your role with the British Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. And last night you held an event exploring how to address electricity supply problems caused by the war. It was called the New Paradigm for Power Generation. What's the plan?
There's all sorts of what I'm going to say is, I mean, that event last night, we can talk about BUCC in a minute. The event was fantastic. It really did make a difference to people here. We had nearly 200 people as guests in the Premier Palace Hotel. Great hotel for people to check out when they come. The Premier Palace Hotel. We have monthly events there, networking events. It was packed last night. Okay, with members and potential members for the British Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. Everybody wanted to hear what these people were saying. I'm going off piste here a little bit, but they were saying things that people hadn't really heard about before, giving people an idea. But there are too many details to go into. And as I said, I wasn't quite as tuned in maybe as I should have been because I was managing a lot of the guests. But it was very interesting to hear. There's a lot of support coming from foreign countries, and Ukrainians got their together. They really have. I've said this many times before. The impetus that a lot of foreign countries and allies and people here are really throwing into the management of the energy problem here at the moment is just super impressive, and we haven't seen anything like this before in the past. So things are going to get better very, very quickly. I'm sure about that. The president's on top of it. The mayor's on top of it. Stand by.
And because of that energy crisis, Simon, curfew restrictions have been relaxed around Ukraine so that people can access aid centres. Is that going smoothly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when this first happened, I thought maybe there might be an increased problem as far as security is concerned, but the SBU, the security services of this country, have got things wired down. They've got things nailed down. The police are all over any problems before they pop up, and the security services are dealing with any threats as when they raise their heads. I don't think we're going to see problems like there used to be in Iraq. So I've worked in every country in the Middle East apart from Iran and Yemen, and I used to run security teams all north to south in Iraq. We used to go out tooled up, properly tooled up, whenever we left our green zone or our villas. And I used to sit on the back seat of one of the armoured vehicles with a burqa on and a mini-me across my lap. And we never had any problems because we were covert, not like some of the security companies over there. But when people went out, the insurgents would try and kill them, full stop. You don't get that in Kyiv, okay? Yes, there are problems in the sky, but if you leave a window open, a drone's not going to fly through it. And the security services are not currently, and I don't think they really will have a major problem dealing with the little man's state-sponsored or Telegram army terrorists. They're not going to have people shooting. We're not going to see people shooting at foreigners on the street or shooting at the locals. As I said, the security service and the police have got things nailed down very tightly. And to answer your question, sorry, we are going to need to be a little bit more aware, I'm sure, but because there are going to be people moving around a little bit more at night time. But I really can't see there being a major problem. We're not going to get IEDs in the street. We're not going to get people shooting you as you go from A to B. As I said, it's not Iraq. Things here are tightly controlled, very tightly controlled. It's a relatively benign environment compared to many other places around the world.
And Simon, if we could draw on your experience as an infantry officer, what are you learning now about the fighting conditions on the front line?
Okay, well, it's cold. It's bloody cold. It was minus 22 here a couple of weeks ago, so there's that. But we've been training to fight the Russians for 70 years. Okay, we are relearning things here. Okay, and that's a good thing. There's been a lot of there's a lot of arrogance in the British military, I'm afraid to say, and they don't like it when people who are out of uniform do in uniform things. I'm not doing that anymore. But the Ukrainians they've got a lot to deal with at the front. There's not enough infantry. And as I said before, there's only one thing that can take and hold ground, and that is infantry. There's nothing else. You can't do that with a drone. The drone manufacturers will tell you different, but you can't.
And the thing you were saying earlier, Simon, about being in Kyiv, that you're not, if you leave your window open, you're not going to have a drone flying through the window. If you're right there in the trench, though, FPV drone can follow you right into the trench, can't it? Which is the difference.
Yeah. So something I suggested. God, I mean, I knew. Okay, I was fighting. I had a drone back in January, February, in April 2022 in my team. And in fact, March, the end of March, I think we were given a drone. We were doing some pretty interesting things. But and I remember saying at the end of 2022, because I thought, well, if these drones are going to get, we only had all hands to deal with these reconnaissance things, but enemy reconnaissance things. They weren't dropping things, nothing like the problems the guys and girls at the front line have to deal with now. And I remember suggesting back in the end of 2023, get fishing nets from countries all around Europe, put them across trench positions, and that will stop things coming in. That started to be that people. I don't know. I literally said that nearly 3 years ago, and then they've been doing that for the last couple of years. I think that makes a big difference. If there's anyone listening with old fishing nets, get them to Ukraine. Yeah, they've got a lot of problems to deal with apart from just drones flying. There's loads of different kinds of drones here. It's very, very difficult, very difficult. But the more people you have in a trench or in a trench system at the front, the less dangerous it is. When you've only got a section manning a platoon position or a platoon stretched across what should be a company group position, then you've got a lot of shit to deal with. Pardon my French, and sorry, pardon my English, but okay, yeah, to get the bleep button working. But yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. There's so much more that people can be doing to support the defenders at the front line.
There's
so much more that these people could be doing as well.
And Simon, you've been living in Ukraine for 4 years now since the full-scale invasion. Do you think that? Do you think the soldiers fighting for the Russians knew who they were attacking back then and why in 2022? And has it changed since then?
Oh, I might swear in a minute. Yeah, the enemy forces at the moment are, their quality is just lower than shark shit. Sorry. They're poorly trained, poorly led, poorly equipped. Their morale is awful. They get treated very badly, but frankly, that doesn't register with anyone here, and nor should it. Back at the start, there were. I mean, even the best people that they had, the VDV, the airborne troops. I mean, they weren't even as good then as the Soviets had, and the Soviets didn't.
And who did they think they were fighting?
So I had an interesting story. Again, 8 years, well, back in 2022. A team down south was an international team captured was working with some local special forces, and some of these special forces captured an airborne officer from the I shouldn't laugh, but it's typically pathetic for the Russians. They captured an airborne officer and a couple of his men. The Russians thought they were going to be offed. They thought they were going to be executed, because that's the sort of thing that Russians did then and carry on doing now. They're just scum. They should be crushed into the ground and swept off the planet. But this officer and these two goons that were captured with him apparently thought that they were fighting Polish troops. They've been told, and this is an officer. They've been told by their higher commanders that NATO had invaded Ukraine. As you look at it, so obviously that's west east. NATO forces had invaded Ukraine, coming underneath Belarus, because Belarus apparently was too strong for NATO to deal with. And the Polish troops at the point of the spear were coming up through the bottom of Ukraine to go in towards Kyiv, and that the Russian troops had been told by their officers that they were fighting against NATO, pushing them back to defend Ukraine and to defend Kyiv. That's that even officers were being told by their higher commanders, NATO's attacked Ukraine, we're liberating Ukraine. They were flummoxed, apparently, absolutely gobsmacked to find out that they were talking to people who were mainly speaking English, and probably quite relieved in some cases that they were being treated by Ukrainians and by these foreign troops as Ukrainians and foreign troops always do, or foreign volunteers did. There's a rule of law. There are. You got to adhere to the Geneva Convention. That's why people are fighting here, to do the right thing for democracy and freedom, etc., etc. I flick my head, but it's all very important. The Russians don't abide by those rules. Like I said, they need to be crushed into the ground and swept into the sea as soon as possible, because they don't think like us. Okay, they don't think like us. They don't behave like us, and they are absolute scum in this country, and need to be dealt with.
And Simon, the Kyiv Post reported this week that in an off-record briefing, the new defence minister set this goal to inflict 50,000 Russian casualties a month to make continuing the war in Ukraine untenable for Russia. Do you think that's possible, and do you think that would work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, God, yeah. They get shot at by their own people when they come back. They're so poorly led. There are some decent Russian troops, of course, and people that have been, they picked up skills as they go along, but there's just, don't feel sorry for Russians. My mum sometimes says, "Oh, they're everybody's. They've all got mothers and blah, blah, they're everybody's son." Says, "Sorry, mum," but no. These people do not think like us. They can be dealt with very, very easily if there's enough manpower here, if there's enough and woman power, if there's enough Ukrainian infantry, and they get supported properly by the allies. Very easy to rack up 50. Stacking up Russians is easy. It really is. It's not always easy to deal with the home team, or wasn't, but an exercise in diplomacy. But there are differences in every country. But yeah, it's very easy to do that. Ukrainians can rack up 50,000 a month easily. I'm sure these guys know how to fight. They're very bright. They're very brave. They're fighting for their own country.
You mentioned the home front. The new defence minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, outlined his vision of a technology-led battlefield, and he spoke of the need for structural reform and feedback from the front. What is the problem, and how big a challenge is that?
I can't possibly comment on the communications between frontline commanders and high command here in Kyiv, because I'm not involved in anything like that. But but there have been some issues in the past, but it's a pretty fluid environment. He's absolutely right. There needs to be a lot more emphasis put on electronic defence and drone defence, etc., because there are not nearly enough infantry stepping forward and not nearly enough infantry being recruited and trained. Yes, it's a vital component to the defence of this country.
What do you think he can do to meet Ukraine's military manpower challenges?
Well, more people need to register for conscription, of course. It's a scary environment, but it's a they're fighting for survival. I mean, it's a no-brainer, And as I said before, the more people you have in a position, the less risky it becomes. But yeah, there's about 26% of the global population of adult male Ukrainians who are not registered or not where they should be right now at the front. That's a relatively small percent, or 26%, obviously it's one quarter, but the vast majority of people in this country are stepping up to the plate. And that, as I'm sure you probably know, that metaphor actually means it's from the First World War, the firing plate. So when you're in a trench, you got the lower part that people can walk up and down on or sleep in there, get some kip or put a brew on, whatever. And then there's the step, the firing plate. And that's when you raise your head above the parapet. So raising your head above the parapet, that's another metaphor. Stepping up to the plate is something that a lot of these people do very well.
And Simon, we're talking before that. We're talking Thursday lunchtime in London. We're talking before the talks between President Zelensky and Donald Trump in Davos, and before the US Special Envoy's talks in Moscow. How does it feel for you sitting in Kyiv, being bombarded on a nightly basis, while the news agenda is taken over by the US president's supposed fear for the security of a NATO ally, Greenland?
Well, first of all, it's a lot of stuff comes in here every night, but we're not getting bombarded every single night. So that's a bit of a myth that this place is somewhere that's so dangerous you can't come to. But it's a big country, and remember, back in the UK or anywhere back in the world, you have a country's worth of bad news squeezed into a few column inches, if at all, in some newspapers. So it can seem worse than it is. Greenland. I mean, obviously, the president of the United States of America, most powerful man in the world, very important, etc., potentially the world's greatest ally, potentially, currently not. Maybe he's, I mean, if it wasn't the president of the United States of America, somebody doing things like complaining about Greenland or going to Venezuela, I might think that's a distraction for to draw people's attention away from some other problems, say maybe Epstein papers or whatever. But it's the United States of America, and it's the president of the United States of America. So it can't possibly be the case that he's just doing something like that. He probably genuinely believes that there is some sort of security threat. There isn't. I mean, for anyone that has any modicum of knowledge of NATO positioning around the world, and it's very easy to find these things out, they would know that there's been an American base in Greenland for some time, and the part of that agreement is that they can reinforce that base whenever they want. Also, as you look at it, so as you look at it, you've got Greenland, Iceland, and then the UK, so north of Scotland. So that's Greenland, Iceland, UK. It's called the GI gap, the GI-UK gap. And between those two areas of the North Sea, between Greenland and Iceland, and also Iceland and the top of Scotland, on the seabed, there's a chain of sonar buoys. Okay, not sonar buoys. There's a chain of fixed listening devices. They've been there for a long time. High-tech stuff. The Russians have not been able to get anything into the North Atlantic for decades without us knowing about it. The technology that Russia or Soviet Union had before that is just, it's not in the same decade as us. Our hunter killer submarines could. I mean, it's just there is not a match, technologically speaking, as far as defense capabilities is concerned. So to say that there's a problem on the surface or subsurface with China coming in through melting ice up in the north, it's gobbledygook. It's gobbledygook.
Meanwhile, you do try and get on with your day job, running Objective Ukraine, which provides business support and security risk management in Ukraine. How do you get foreign investors committed to Ukraine when the country's fighting for its very survival?
Well, as I said before, this is not Iraq. Okay, for anyone that knows how to operate here, and we very much do, it's a relatively benign environment. So, Objective Ukraine, I set that up at the end of 2022. We're registered in London. We're registered here in Kyiv. We identify people that want to work over here to do good things for themselves and also to prop up the Ukrainian economy and help these people. We help them we advise them, we help them to plan, we help them to move, we look after them when they're here. And what certain people can do, because of our background here and because of what we've done for the country, we're able to open doors that a lot of people in a lot of companies just, they don't even know the doors exist, let alone get through them. So yeah, we're plugged in. We're plugged into many industries here. We're plugged into the military. We're plugged into the government. We're plugged into a lot of the embassies. The British embassy can be a little bit tricky, but fortunately, there's a great guy there. He's been there for about a year and a half. I'll give you a clue what his name is. King Arthur's favourite knight. I'm not going to mention his full name, but so he's been gripping the trade team here, which was troublesome, shall we say, and had a very poor reputation amongst the British expat and all the expats here, sadly. But this particular individual, and with the new ambassador as well, who's so much better than the last one, so much better. They're turning things around and they're doing good things, mainly for British companies who want to come here. But hopefully, eventually, we hope to be able to form relationships as well with them. But going back to your question, it isn't Iraq. As I said, you don't need to go out of the door with a bag of blast grenades and a machine gun across your lap in armored vehicles. It's not like that. This is a relatively benign environment. If you plan to come over here, if you can get the insurance here, the problem is insurance, okay? But it's one of the problems. So if you're a large company, you can self-insure, you can spread the risk, but large companies will want to spread the risk anyway. The problem is here, well, it's not a problem, it's great. There's a lot of very bright people who work very hard. They know what they're doing. In Iraq, it was pretty much a blank canvas in many respects. So we used to work with my company, we used to work at the company I was the ops director for. We used to work with people like Lucent Technologies, Motorola, and a bunch of other people. They would come in, they were providing expertise, they were providing equipment that these guys have already got. Okay, they need more equipment, they need more support, etc. But even back then in Iraq, where people would try and blow you up or brass you up every time you went out of your safe zone. You don't get that here. You don't get that. The unknown quantity, of course, well, according to the underwriters, and it isn't relatively unknown quantity, is the stuff that flies through the air occasionally. But that's a manageable risk as well. Now, I'm not being flippant here. These are manageable risks. People just don't seem to really understand just how easy it is and what a thriving business environment the capital city of Ukraine is. It's easy to do business here if you know the right people who know the right people, okay? And they just need to come over here. If you wait for things to be perfect, you'll be waiting forever, like in any country. If you wait for things to be perfect, then you'll miss the boat as well.
Simon, on that positive note, we shall leave it for this time. I know you wanted to mention Children of Heroes. We will try and put it in the notes with this episode, but we have to leave. We'll let you get on with your day job.
Okay, do that. Yeah, that's one of the fantastic charities there. I'm just going to quickly show you something, Kate, if you can. So I'm in a coffee shop. This is what Kyiv looks like, people. Normal. Look at that. That building over there is a mini version of the Selfridges, basically. Normal. People are getting on with things. There's no drones in the sky. It's a normal business environment. Okay, get involved.
That is great to see, Simon. Thank you so much. And thanks for being so frank as usual. Good to see you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye, Kate.
Thank you for watching Frontline with me, Kate Chabot. For more on the war in Ukraine, please subscribe to this channel. And for the latest news and updates, you can also head over to the Times' YouTube channel. You can also read the latest on thetimes.com. And remember, if you want exclusive updates and content, sign up for a membership right here. For now, though, thanks for watching.